Massage should be performed in the so-called football stance or support position. This state implies stability and balance, both physical and emotional. In other words, you should stand firmly without leaning or tipping over, because leaning in any direction and feeling off balance creates compensatory tension in the body, which is then transferred into your movements. Plus, our emotions also create this effect. For example, right now, let's say I'm working, and then I suddenly remember my neighbor with the power drill who gave me a hard time, and my hands start to tense up, anger appears in my touch, and all of this gets transferred to our beloved client. That's how it is. That's why we need to mentally prepare ourselves during this period, relax, organize our thoughts, and focus on the contact. After that, we start working. The easiest way to apply oil during the session is like this, although you can do it differently if you want. You can put this into practice in a variety of different ways too. So what do you think? So what exactly are the main movements used in a professional oil massage of the forearm? What you see here are basically variations of just 3 or 4 very simple basic movements. So let's take a closer look and ask ourselves, what is our first basic movement? The straight stroke, right? The straight movement. That's one. Second, rotation. There will be several variations of rotation. Third option, a transverse movement and an angular movement. So basically, these are all the options from which we create our pattern. Well, there are also a few interesting combinations, for example, in the longitudinal movement. Like this one, when we move towards the shoulder, like that, and then bend. Basically, the rest plus articulation, and let's not forget that we also have the hands. That is, I don't advocate for this kind of technique where we lift off. For me, the hand is a working surface. So even though it's called forearm massage, it would actually be more accurate if it sounded at least somewhat acceptable to call it whole arm massage. Because in fact the shoulder is also used, and this transition here is exactly for moving to the shoulder, as you can see. Stroking with the shoulder can be quite gentle, and it extends the movement and control. Is that clear? So what might this look like in practice? Let's start by applying some oil. Well, if we take a moment to look at the situation from a slightly different perspective, it becomes quite clear. Let's begin, as they say, with the actual process. You can work without rushing. Right now, the main technique is stroking. There are many techniques. You can spread your hands across like this, or do a longitudinal movement. Work with your hands as if they're joined together. Like this, right? You see, it's a whole group of techniques when we work with clasped hands. As you can see, right here in front of us. I'm just using different grips. The horn. There you go. These are clasp, independent. The simplest technique is washing the floor. See, as if you're washing the floor. This is a short swing. And this one is bigger. Did everyone have to wash the floors by hand until the water was clean? The men immediately nodded in understanding while the women stayed silent. You see, here you can use the wrist or other variations as well. You can move simultaneously along the arm and the torso. Alternatively, you could also handle it, exactly like this. It creates the impression of having many arms. Next. A few interesting figure eights. Here's one option. Now here's another potential option for you. And a third option. At the same time, you can scoop quite deeply with your hand. I'd like to point out a common mistake here. People start reaching out like this, straining their back, and then pull themselves up with their back like this. You shouldn't pull yourself with your back. You need to disengage your back. I prefer to do this technique like this. I lean a little this way over here and sort of sink down. Even if I'm standing with my head down and I fall over there, supporting myself with my hands to compensate. Otherwise, I go back like this, squatting down. But no. You can also do this technique alternately. Like this, as if we're digging something with our hands, like digging up potatoes like a hoe. But slowly, like the Estonians do. For now, this is the simplest trajectory, so to speak. Of course, there are more complex techniques as well. But with the stroking motions, we can make quite powerful passes, pressing ones. We can do a pass like this. For example, we could potentially create a specific variation just like this one, which serves as a great starting point. It is now slowly passing through the narrow neck area. The speed can be different and the pressure can be different too. And the most interesting thing, which you'll enjoy after you master all these elements, is the so-called carousel exercise. You need to learn how to move along the table. We shouldn't move with side steps, not like this, but with crossing steps. They give a sense of continuity, like this. Our steps are actually just like how we usually walk every day. Only here in this exercise, we are simply stepping sideways instead. But at the same exact time, of course, so that it doesn't simply turn into a repetitive carousel or a basic massage, you really need to be able to make all sorts of smooth transitions without ever stopping the massage flow. Naturally, if you perform about 10 full circles like this, you will gradually get a little more used to moving around on your own feet. What? There is actually a lot of very interesting stuff to discover there, including your own unique figure eights and rhythmic patterns. You can incorporate your own unique flourishes and creative tricks, which are exactly the kind of specialized techniques that people who practice the traditional Lomi style especially love to show off. That is why mastering this aspect is so important for your practice too. We will also carefully monitor and observe this, yes, which can be interpreted in two distinctly different perspectives. Well, to be honest, it seems that the leg kind of just like this right here. But this technique is mostly used for show so that the massage therapist can look at themselves in the mirror and be amazed at their own perfection. Because if you look closely, you see it's smooth and everything looks beautiful, but I don't see a single eye anywhere. That's why this part can't really appreciate all our pirouettes. Without any grand monuments.